Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video. I have all of this really thin washi tape hanging around in my craft room. Had it for a while, I've been collecting for years. I used to use it in my planner, but let's face it, these days for my planner, I'm pretty plain Jane. So I wanted to come up with a different way to use these more narrow washi tapes. I'm going to be showing you a way to do that today with ink blending. Before I get to that, I'll show you the stamp sets and dies I'll be using. I'm using the Stems and Sprigs stamp set from Mama Elephant, as well as the coordinating dies. I'll also be using the Slim Card Basics die set from Mama Elephant. I'll actually only be using the kind of large rectangular with the stitch line die out of that set. In fact, I'm going to start out by using that die to cut some white cardstock. This is Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock. This is the 110-pound version. And I just cut that out using my die cutting machine. And now I'm going to use that long strip of white cardstock to create a slimline card. Here's where that narrow washi tape comes into play. I love how narrow this is. It's really easy to just tear off as I apply it. I'm going to be putting these narrow strips in a diagonal pattern and have it cover the entire piece of cardstock. The thing that's kind of neat about doing this with washi tape is that for slimline cards in particular, these cards that are larger or longer than 6 inches, you can use your washi tape instead of having to use a stencil. Most stencils, unless they're the really large ones, are only 6 by 6. So you really have to have a repeating pattern or get creative to cover up that area that the stencil doesn't cover. With this washi tape, whatever pattern you choose to create, whether it's lines like this, or you could do a grid or anything like that, you could just use washi tape. So you're not limited by the size of the stencil. I'm using some Antique Linen Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to blend this color in from the bottom. I want to get it near the top, but not quite. And after I have the Antique Linen, I'm going to switch to Gathered Twigs. And I'll bring that in just to add a little bit of a darker brown near the bottom. And I want to have a nice blend going up from this. Now I'm going to peel off all of that washi tape. This is the best part. And you can see those really clean stripes that the washi tape leaves behind. I think this is a great way to use all that thin washi tape. So I'm going to clean up my work surface here. This is a Tonic Easy Clean mat. Just makes it super easy for blending. I'm going to just wipe it down with a baby wipe to get rid of any of that ink that's still on the surface. And then I'm going to go back in with some more Antique Linen Distress ink. And I'm going to put a very light coating over this entire surface. And this is going to soften the contrast of those stripes. They were pretty stark and made the white stripes stand out a ton. And I didn't want them to be quite that noticeable. I wanted it to kind of blend in with the background. So I decided to bring in that antique linen and just soften the entire background. So now I'm going to be doing some stamping. I kind of looked at all of the images and I decided to use 4 flowers and 2 of the leaf stems. And I'm going to stamp them all at once onto some 80-pound white cardstock. Using Intense Black ink from Simon Says Stamp, and I chose this ink in particular today because it's a Copic friendly ink. You can use it with alcohol markers without any problems, and so that's why I chose this black ink in particular. I stamped it once, making sure not to squish down the line too much because this is a very delicately lined image on all of these. And so as I stamp it twice to get really solid lines, I'm just barely tapping down on the door of my MISTI because I want to make sure I don't get any like thicker lines. So now I'm going to do some Copic coloring, really simple coloring. I'm going to do kind of reds to oranges to a little bit of a corally peach shade and then a yellow flower. I thought that would look really pretty with the warm tones of that antique linen and gathered twigs background. So I'm going to speed up the video here, turn on some music so you can see the coloring, and I'll catch up with you after I've die cut all of these flowers. So after all of the flowers were colored and cut out, I did want to just fix this red flower because I had some of that Copic coloring go outside the lines. So I just used a white gel pen for that, cleaned up that area. I arranged my flowers on my striped background just to sort of figure out the placement. And I also hovered my stamp over the top to kind of figure out which stamp I wanted to use. And then I adhered them down to this background. Now my method for adhering all of these flowers is to put some foam adhesive behind the flower itself and then put some liquid glue at the bottom of the stem. That's because I decided to do a black strip of cardstock, a very narrow strip of cardstock going over top of the bottom of the stems. So I wanted the stems to be flat on this background. I didn't want them to be standing up at all. So I glued everything down and then I cut my narrow strip of black cardstock. This is some Basil Licorice Twist cardstock, and I cut down a very, very narrow strip of foam tape to go behind that black cardstock. Then placed it over the top of the bottom of those stems, and then I was able to snip off the excess of that cardstock. So my card is ready for the greeting now. I'm going to place this entire piece inside my MISTI, and then I'll be stamping directly down onto the front. So I've only got one chance at this. I'm going to be very, very careful and make sure I get a really good stamped impression. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is my preferred black ink when I'm not going to be doing Copic coloring. When I am doing alcohol marker coloring, I'll switch to that Simus Says Stamp Intense Black. But since I just stamped this greeting, I used my VersaFine Onyx Black. So the last thing to do is to put this on a card base. And a slimline card, the size is 8.5 by 3.5. So I cut my cardstock to 7 inches wide and then scored it at 3.5. And this is going to give me a nice finished card that will fit inside a business-sized envelope. So you don't have to buy any special envelopes for these. You can use whatever you find, even in office supply stores. Put some foam adhesive on the back, and then put that directly down onto my card front. Now, I've done some slimline cards in the past. I've been doing for about 10 years or so. And in the past, I used to make them 3.5 by 9. So they were just half an inch longer. But this is a more economical way because it's the same width as a letter piece of cardstock. Thanks so much for watching today. You can check out all the supplies down in the video description or in the supply list at my blog. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in another video very soon.